Okay, we're all live. Good evening and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Coast EVs, your fortnightly fast charge on electric vehicles and infrastructure. I have our usual suspects, Mr. Eric Way of the News Coolum channel over in California, and
hello.
Mr. Walter Schultze down in North Carolina, right? I get confused.
North Kakalaki, yep.
North Carolina. Welcome. How is everybody doing?
We're getting ready for the storm. We
Yeah.
actually have some snow coming in, so
that's what we were told on Monday, and it never happened. We had a beautiful sunshine day, and everyone could sit outside in Boston for the middle of winter. So we were happy to take it. Yeah, so we are Coast to Coast TVs. We're on number 9 now of the current iteration. We are on Spotify, Amazon Music, and a few other places if you prefer your EV news and charging analysis in audio form after the fact. I usually try and get these done the day after, kind of by lunchtime usually, so the timestamps are in there on the YouTube replay, and the audio versions should be uploaded by the end of the day, depending on the service you use. So thank you for joining us, and we have a bunch of stuff on today. We're going to be talking DC fast charging in New Mexico with our guest Jacob, who is also RT Penguin 1 out of New Mexico. So we'll look forward to that. And the main topic of today is location for charging. We'll have some DC fast charging chat, but also I think we'll try and bake level 2 into the mix after last time's discussion. Make sure we don't do down a critical piece of the infrastructure. But for now, we will crack on. Well, let me remind you to leave your credentials down in the comments. Join us in the live chat. Let us know what you want to hear about, where your favorite charging locations are, that kind of thing as we get into it. But we'll start with the news, which at the moment is kind of there's a few things thin on the board, but we wanted to discuss the Honda Prologue because it's one of those EVs that probably can fly under the radar fairly easily. It's not as kind of flashy as your big Lucid Gravities or the latest Tesla, but one of those that could be pretty important. And it's also kind of got that link to Ultium and the Blazer EV. So Eric, do you want to kick us off with a little bit on the Honda Prologue?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, a little bit of the Honda Prologue coming up in terms of just, we knew that it was going to be based on Ultium. We knew that Honda was actually building their own battery factory, in fact, to support it. So, this has a decent amount of push. And I know people have been a little bit negative on Honda for having to rely on an OEM. But I think it just makes sense. It's the fastest way to get to market. And you're dealing with an OEM like GM, which has traditionally been a good partner in terms of working with other automakers. And so, yeah, I think one of I think 3 big things that stood out to me about the Hyundai if only maybe an eGaM Prologue. No,
charging Prologue.
The Honda Prologue though is I know a lot of people are concerned because it's basically the same underpinnings as the Chevy Blazer EV. So there's concerns about software issues and integration. But everything that we've seen, it appears that Honda is managing all of that software and integration themselves. And unlike GM, I think the big distinction is they're maintaining Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So, which is going to be a huge deal, I know, for a lot of prospective buyers. And I think some of the integration with software that GM is having has a lot to do with their over-the-air updates, which Honda might not. They just might not have to deal with some of that integration issues. So I do not expect the Prologue to have anywhere near the same number of issues that we've seen with the Blazer, with the even with the Cadillac Lyriq. The other big thing I think people have been kind of down on is only 150 kilowatt charging. But I remember just a year or two ago, people saying, well, if only the Chevy Bolt EV had 150 kilowatt charging, I would buy it in a second. So we go from 150 kilowatt charging and a 3.5 to 4 mile per kilowatt hour EV being all anybody ever needs to now not being good enough. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the other point that really kind of stands out to me is apparently they're looking at decent volume, 40,000 units this year and 70,000 units next year. So that by itself would put Honda in the top 5 for automakers in the United States in terms of EV sales. So yeah, that's a huge jump out of nowhere. So anyway, that's all I got to say. I'm done with my monologue about a prologue.
No, that's the Honda monologue is next. So yeah, I mean, I think we've covered in the comments a little bit there that it's being advertised a lot. I've certainly seen a lot more. You know, I kind of check. I get a little bit in through my soccer feeds from European kind of games on the weekend, but that's where I usually see the EV advertising for the most part, beyond kind of Super Bowl spots and that kind of thing. But it's definitely been like a consistent campaign across digital media, social media, online kind of video, all that stuff. So I'm quite surprised actually, because again, it's not one of those that was really heavily kind of pushed initially. I mean, you know it was coming, but it probably got subsumed a little bit by the Blazer EV being, you know, one of GM's Ultium, and a lot of kind of speculation on that and the focus on the big three. But Walter, the obviously wider thoughts are important as well, but I know you had done a full video with GM kind of ditching Apple CarPlay, and you have the lyrics. So do you want to start there and take us down the rabbit hole of what you think on the Honda Prologue?
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see the full contract of the agreement between Honda and GM on what they're allowed to change and what they're not allowed to in order to make the parts replenishment pipeline still available. I'm sure there is very specific verbiage concerning that, but as you say, they're running their own software, which is interesting, obviously necessary. When you see the interior of it, it definitely has a GM feel to it, but there's still Honda styling. And one thing that I noticed about the Prologue is for some reason they made the back of the roof slope a little bit more than the Blazer, and it almost has kind of a coupe look to it. As a result, I understand the headroom is a little less than the Blazer because it slopes back a little bit before the Blazer does, and that's one of the main keys of the Blazer is it's so roomy on the inside. It's a key selling point, plus the 300 miles of range. The Prologue maintains that, but you get the dealer network with Honda and the brand known for reliability and dependability behind it. So it could do a lot to dispel some of the lingering naysayers over the Ultium underlying tech, which could raise all boats if it is successful. And I understand we could be on a trend right now in order to have Tesla unseated as the dominant brand. Although they would still be the dominant brand, this might be the first year that non-Teslas exceed the sale of EVs for Teslas. And this would be a part of that mix.
It'd be interesting if we got there, because that had kind of been the supposition, you know, following Europe's lead, really, that once you got enough mass, all it took didn't have to be any one automaker really pushing Tesla out. It just had to be all of them, enough models that non-Teslas could kind of outnumber, you know, Tesla through the market and push that share down. I think it did happen initially, but then they've kind of risen back up from that. They still maintain that half the market, 56% kind of level at the last count. But I don't know. I mean, I'm excited by this one because it's a mainstream automaker, and I don't think it's quite, the price is quite right. It's still a little bit out for me, you know, when it's in that $50,000 range, just below for the entry trim. I think you're asking a little too much, but you know, again, it's getting close to the point where you say if they start to have downward pressure on prices and they kind of follow Ford's lead with like the Marquis, Hyundai kind of leaning into leases, that kind of thing, maybe there's some mileage in that really getting some volume. But the overlap there with Ultium is interesting. There's definitely been some good videos out there on kind of the comparisons and feeling like, you know, Blazer EV's got a little more range, but maybe the Honda drives a little, you know, more comfortably, feels a little more kind of family accessible, that kind of thing. It's not as futuristic looking, so it maybe has more accessibility to that mainstream market. So that's why I'm kind of more excited by it. It's not any one thing that really blows it out of the water. You know, there's nothing there that makes me feel like this is, you know, the EV that I need, but all it really needs to do is win more of that early mainstream, right? That's what we really need in the sector now, is not something that's another, attempting to be a Tesla killer or, attracting those kind of headlines. We just need a solid EV that hits that price point. I just think it needs to be a little bit cheaper.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, at least it's not anywhere near as egregious as the Aria. The Nissan Aria is the one that I think just way priced itself out of the market. And you're coming from a brand that had a lot of EV loyalists, right? A loyal following of your EV brand, and then you just priced the Aria at a point that people just couldn't approach it. So Honda coming in a little bit under that, I think, is good. And then from a sort of West Coast perspective, I don't know about on the East Coast, but Hondas are extremely popular in California, and just all up and down the West Coast. So I think with their brand loyalty, they have a chance to make big waves in the EV community. So,
okay, well, sorry, go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, I was just going to say what I think they might be butting up against principally will be the ID4 getting turned out of Chattanooga. And that's priced a little bit lower, similar size, not quite as big. I've heard the ID4 called a boring EV, which is, it works. It's not flashy. It's not a Tesla. It's not bleeding edge technology. It's just a family hauler and roll around and get groceries and stuff and go on road trips if you want to. And I think that might be, as you say, a little bit too high on the initial price, but maybe that's just a debut pricing, and eventually they'll start to adjust as time goes on. We'll have to see.
Has anyone else heard or can confirm the rumors that the new ID4 won't be receiving free unlimited charging on?
Yeah, I thought they were shifting to a kilowatt hour level, right? So they were getting... no, it was membership plans, I think. So we're giving away a free 2 or 3 years of Electrify America Pass Plus, and then some level, maybe it was a certain amount of kilowatt hours. So yeah, I think that kind of thing is going to be sunsetting pretty soon here.
Yeah, okay.
Because the Prologue comes with a bunch of different variable ones, right? So you get a level of EVgo. They kind of lean into the EVgo GM partnership. So that's maybe 500, 750, something like that, dollars in charging credit. And then you have an amount on Electrify America as well, just to get that coverage. And then you can trade some of it in for either a home charger or the kind of, credits towards a home charger, something like that. So I think the automakers seem to be getting a little smarter about that, trying to balance the needs and also not just do what they said to me and give free charging forever and ever. Amen. But I think we want to, let's go. If there's any other kind of thoughts, things you want us to touch on with the Honda Prologue, drop those in the comments. I think it's a good kind of standard bearer for the, getting into that more affordable EV space. And we'll see if the price comes down. If it doesn't, I think it will struggle. But if we get to that kind of, 40,000 level with whatever way they do it, that could be an interesting one to kind of keep track of. But there was another question here, and because of the Ultium link, we kind of want to hit some of the GM vehicles as well. It was on the Silverado. Do we know when the Silverado is going to be getting into, well, it's in work fleet kind of truck mode at the moment, right? Eric, any kind of feelers on when that's going to hit the roads for the public?
Not that I know. I mean, we know the RST is coming first. And I mean, we've seen some of them on the roads, but not in customer hands. So my guess is it's going to align with Mary Barra's statement about a big push coming, Q2 of this year. And I'm going to be really curious to see the Q1 deliveries, the fleet deliveries, because if the reports that we're seeing are right, we're looking at hundreds of them being delivered at a time to different fleet customers. And like Hertz rental car, the Caltrans received apparently like several hundred of them. So yeah, I don't know when they're going to start, but I'm hoping Q2 would be my guess for the RST. So,
all right. I would hope to see that. I've been impressed, although it's always worth reiterating, getting those fleet orders out there is such a big deal in terms of overall electrification, right? I mean, I know we want to see them in the local chargers and see them on the highway, take fun pictures with them, but, just out there doing work is a big piece of, getting more electric vehicles on the road, and you can do them, 100 to 200 vehicles at a time, as you say. Walter, anything before we leave Ultium on the kind of lyric production numbers? Anything you've seen with associated push of Ultium models that will spike the lyrics numbers?
Just a lot of people in the Facebook group indicating that they've been waiting for it for 2 years, and all of a sudden it's sitting in their driveway. So there seems to be a lot of deliveries occurring. I see them on the road a lot more also. We were unique there for a while, but not anymore. There's quite a few lyrics in town and cruising around. So I don't have any exact numbers about the production occurring, but it feels as though that they are they've solved whatever problem they had that was holding it up, and they're starting to get delivered to customers a lot more.
Fingers crossed. It'd be good to see a few more of those, the charging stations alongside the hundreds of ID4s and Ioniq 5s, present company included. Alrighty, let's go around the houses and coast to coast, hopefully. Jay Donaldson, good evening. Anthony, up in soggy Seattle, is it ever anything other? I'm sure it is. It's a beautiful part of the world that I've never been to, so don't take my word for it. Leonard, hello from Tulsa. T. Palmer over in San Diego, down south of you, Eric. Brian Ribby is up in Minnesota. Hope all is well with you and the family. They got to experience the Cybertruck after Brian had done the delivery event. His wife and daughter got to see it in the I assume it's the Minneapolis Tesla showroom, so I hope I'm going to go and watch that afterwards, and everyone else should as well. Mike Mahan is here from SoCal as well. As we mentioned, been doing a lot of advertising down there with the Honda Prologue. Mike Carter we have. Not terribly happy with Honda as a manufacturer, but at least the Prologue is a GM car, so a vote for General Motors there. And yeah, I think we answered this question from T. Palmer. Yes, we did say the Honda Prologue will have CarPlay. That's going to be one of those things that will probably give people a reason to go for that over the Blazer EV. Leonard says Acura version looks really cool. Yeah, with that added luxury, that could be something that kind of sharpens it up a little bit, gets away from
That's the Epilogue?
No.
Trying to remember. They do numbers and letters, don't
Numbers and letters. Yes. This escapes me, but it's the Lyric under Honda badge.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes more sense with the luxury kind of vibe, right? Anthony says, just got back from London, refreshing to see so many EVs, not a Tesla. Yeah, I couldn't even keep up. I tried to take stock of what's coming out over there, but you're really starting to get, and that's a whole podcast in itself, the Chinese manufacturers are coming into parts of Europe and probably I assume the UK now, plus your MGs, your Honda E over there. There's so many different brands that really has taken Tesla's chunk in a way that we haven't seen over here yet, but that is kind of on the horizon from the headlines we've been seeing. Mike says Honda is big in Southern California. Brian is on board with lots of run-of-the-mill EVs. Yeah, I'm not really worried about boring anymore. I know we've had lots of kind of Elon tweets about the Roadster today with rocket packs and sub 1 second 0 to 60, but that's not what the soccer moms are going to need. They need a family hauler and space in the back for the bull bikes. Let's see. Finish this up right here. Some people just buy the brand, says Leonard. Parents family leased the Lexus version of the BZ4X. Yeah, I think it hasn't stopped the fact. I know we get pulled up in the EV kind of qualities and the technology with the those kind of stats, but there's a lot of people that don't even need the fast charging. There's people that I had met in a Bolt that I said, does the fast charging limit you at all? Do you feel kind of hamstrung? Like, what? Why would I go to a fast charger? I never leave a 50-mile radius of my house. It's just not what they use the vehicle for. So yeah, it's one of those where I think you have to match the vehicle to the use case. And I think if you walk around your neighborhood and just start to see the number of CRVs, RAV4s, all the kind of boring humdrum, SUVs that just get a job done. Yeah, that's what we need in electric form. Just get that price to a point where, the people who aren't looking to take it on a cross-country road trip can just do their chores with it. And then we have, Acura ZDX. So, and Bill chiming in from Tampa. All right, for the first time in about 9 episodes, I'm up to date with the comments. So we will crack on to our main topic for the day.
And
Oh,
I
sorry,
think
unless
we
you
are
have some-
quite literally coast to coast now.
Yeah, I think we got everything there, right? I'm glad we're on the East Coast, because there's a lot of California and West Coast representation up there. If you have anything you'd like us to cover, we may have some time at the end of the show. Probably not, but you never know. So make sure you drop the questions down in the comments, or topics you'd like us to cover. But the main topic for today will be that, where do we want to DC fast charge? So the kind of real estate echoing location always seems to come up. We've talked about it in the past and hinted at it around, and this pretty much came out of our post-stream conversation and email threads the last time. Just trying to make sense of some of the places that these new networks would go, right? So the big question was, IONNA has this 30,000 ports that it wants to put in, which depending on the math, kind of how many stalls you're going to install at any one location, is somewhere between 5,000, 7,500, something like that. Actual stations and locations, where will those be? And it goes true for anybody who's trying to at the moment enter the DC fast charging space, because it has this this lack of real estate at some point when you're talking about travel routes, certainly, because there's only so many exits and so many truck stops or retail centers that they within the half mile or mile of those exits. And there's other places, of course, that we want to charge as well, depending on the dwell time, the length of your trip, all of these kind of things, what kind of route planning you've got going on. So I wanted to kind of kick it off with maybe a thought on what is the charging experience that kind of sticks out the most for you. Not so much from it was an amazing charger, it was the latest hardware, or it was a really good road trip, just that it matched the desire at the time. It kind of made sense in the grand scheme of your road trip, that it had the right amenities, the right facilities at the right time of day, that kind of thing. And I started with you, Eric. So Walter, anything that jumps out immediately as a kind of this was just a good fit, good location, and a good place to install this particular type of charging?
I've been using Eric's guidance. Although you're deferring to me, there's actually going to be a lot of Eric contact. I've been using Eric's site scoring method, and it really checks the boxes for what you would want at any given location, specifically if there's points of interest close by, distance from the interstate exit, things like that. But the amenities that we're now talking about were not really a part of the discussion just a few years ago. Really, it was just survival mode. Can we travel in an EV and get from point A to point B? Is that even possible? That was really the discussion. But now we're shifting gears and talking about different types of issues, like, well, is there a restroom that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And that decreases the count pretty significantly. Is there security? Is there lighting? And if you're a lady, that really matters to you, because personal safety is something that's more focused. So this could be a long discussion. The site scoring that I have adopted as directed by Eric's long-standing method kind of spells out the amenities and the types of things you would want to see at a charger. But I think the discussion this evening should probably broaden even more and to talk about who are we partnering with for our locations. Because yes, I'd like to get a cheeseburger and go to the bathroom, but there's even more concerns about site locations and site selections.
Yeah, for sure. I think, as we've said it in the past, it's been an exercise in getting pins in the map in the past. It's just been exciting to have a location, and this was kind of the preamble with some of the comments beforehand, is not more Walmarts. We want more Walmarts. We'll get onto this, later, but there's no doubt that the Walmart was a good way to kind of roll things out fast for the likes of Electrify America. But now we have, it's a sign of how much the market, or at least the charging infrastructure, has matured that we're now talking about, you know, something I think Eric has talked about for probably a lot longer than either Walter or myself, having that, you know, depth and redundancy that you can start to choose the chargers that you go to and start to be a little more critical of sites based on not just that they're there and great, it's got enough power, but that the amenities match the use case of the location, what you want from it, or at least if there's a, you know, a super fast charger just across the road, maybe a slow one on a retail outlet is a bit more of a fit. So Eric, that kind of leads into you blazing our trail many years ago with this stuff and starting to notice that you could kind of start to choose where you wanted to stop and match it to what you needed to do rather than just the fact that there was a charger there. How are you feeling about your best experience to a, you know, a location that was just right, and where we are, you know, as a national network, if not just California?
Yeah, well, I mean, picking just one best location is super hard because, you know, there's always there's a lot of different options. And I don't know why this just suddenly popped into my head because it's a terrible charging site. But there was an EV Connect that was installed in Pismo Beach at a government building. Just on like the second floor of this parking garage just off of Highway 101. You're overlooking the ocean and you're literally right next door to McClintock's, which if you want to go for some cowboy food out near San Luis Obispo, that's where you go. It's just a single 100 amp BTC power slim unit, but it's not a great charger, but the location is kind of perfect. You know, and I don't know why that one jumped out to me, but the other one that kind of jumps out to me is one of my old perennial ones. And I have full confession, when I first started traveling, I actually picked my charging locations based on towns where cute girls that I met in high school lived. So that meant Selma, Galt, you know, locations like that along Highway 99, and Selma next to the Spike and Rail. It's almost like the Pea Soup Anderson sort of model, if you've seen that. And they've got gardens. They have this little koi pond with swans in it, little train, a miniature train for kids to ride around. But they also have a Chevron gas station and convenience store right there. They have a hotel motel right there. They have a restaurant right there. So all of these things and a couple of 50 kilowatt EVgo chargers. And that for the longest time was sort of my go-to, you know, charging stop because of how nice the location was if I just wanted to stop, charge, and grab a meal on a long trip. So, yeah, those are probably two really positive experiences for me in terms of sites. And again, those are 50 kilowatt charging sites. Mm-hmm. There's nothing special about them. So, but yeah, I started thinking about this as as Electrify America was first starting their build out. And I did a response video years ago when they announced their partnership with Walmart, because I thought that was a huge deal. And I thought it was really important. A lot of people poo-poo Walmart, but it's a very good site for travelers and for people, locals living in the area who buy an EV and they can't charge at home. Because what I think a lot of people overlook about Walmart is, for a lot of communities, it is their grocery store, right? It's where they go regularly to pick up groceries, supplies, pet food. So having chargers at those locations dispersed all around America, it's really, those are really good sites. And then talking to what Walter was talking about with well-lit parking lots, 24-hour security. A lot of the Walmarts were open 24 hours a day, 27 days a week, with bathrooms, varying levels of cleanliness, but they're there, all of the amenities that you need, and even quick food that you can pick up and grab, right? So I think people kind of overlooked it, but it got my mind thinking about the sort of most important locations where we could be adding chargers. And at this point, even in this point in our development, I think grocery stores are still probably the number one location that's being overlooked because it's what can support communities. If you put a bank of 6 to 8 chargers, like a Chempower 50 kilowatt per post split power unit at every grocery store in America, you'd fix our infrastructure problems overnight. And I think people overlook that because according to the statistics, it's where Americans go over and over again, right? 1.5 to 2 times a week for 40 to 45 minutes. You don't have charging at home, but you need groceries. So there you go. So that's kind of my top location as terms of an archetype, along with convenience stores where gas stations would normally go, travel plazas. That's what facilitates those longer trips off of highways, off of freeways, in smaller communities that don't necessarily have grocery stores or need them. And then to me, the most underserved location is our national parks. And this really speaks to that point that Walter made our last session that really caught my mind and got me thinking about this. Is we've seen a lot of these charging sites closed down because they've lost leases, they've lost access, the business shut down, it wasn't, sustainable, whatever. Government buildings don't typically have that issue. And if you're talking about putting fast chargers at national parks, at national forest locations, places where people have to go in and get maps, get permits, they're going to be there for 10, 15, 20 minutes. They're going to be walking their dogs. They're going to be, using the bathroom and just talking to a park ranger and finding out what they can and can't do. I think EA built a pretty notable charger at the Grand Canyon. That's important. We need those as well. And that's probably, in my opinion, those parks, even city and state parks, are underserved in terms of, support from charging sites. So those are probably my big 3: grocery stores, convenience stores, and parks, all parks.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to echo that last one, not least because, we actually had charging when we went up Skyline Drive last summer. They did have one of the visitor centers had a level 2, one of the old, if you remember, the little boxy Clipper Creeks that looked like a little Star Wars robot. Had one of those there, and it gave us enough. But if you start to think about even a very limited amount of fast charging there at 25 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt would make all the difference in the world at those stops. Because we went, we did a hike, we did a session with the nature specialist there. There's lunch, So again, it's multi-use, right? So yes, some people are stopping in just to get a map, and maybe 5-10 minutes isn't enough for that kind of thing. But for everything else that you do at these places, and you're not in a rush at that point for the most part in the parks. Hopefully, you're enjoying yourself and not timing your charge, unless you're a nerdy specky for like we would be. But there's definitely that use case there, and it kind of starts to get us down towards that level of 50 kilowatts being useful, right? So not to throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, we need this high power charging everywhere, but that we have these places where the lower power charging and even the high power level 2 charging at that kind of 19 kilowatt level could be a solution. So I definitely agree on that. Certainly the national parks, state parks, places you're going to linger a while, if level 2 isn't a fit because you're not going to be there for 3, 4, 5 hours or all day, then certainly some kind of lower power DC charging could be a good fit.
Yeah, and don't forget too, we're looking at transitioning our government fleets to electric and having chargers at government facilities for those vehicles makes sense as well.
Yeah, they talked about fleets. We talked about Chevy Silverado, work trucks. They need a place to charge as well, So there's a lot of this this piece, and then starting to get it integrated, you can go off with battery storage, the kind of more remote locations, and being able to use those chargers to kind of fit into sustainability goals as well. There's a whole bunch there. Well, I think we've laid that context pretty well to introduce our guest for today. He looks ready. I can't really see down in the thumbnail, but I'll throw him up and let him kind of introduce himself. Jacob, who goes by the handle of RTPenguin1 on YouTube. I'm sure folks have seen his videos, so you can check him out down in the description. And I think actually, Jacob, I saw a notification that you just put a video live. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Is the mic working?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're all good.
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah, I
seeing
just put a video.
AP1 EV6 road trip.
It's like a teaser trailer. Yeah, that's coming out in the
Okay.
next few days.
Sweet. Fabulous. So welcome. Let me, let you take the floor and kind of introduce yourself a little bit. And I've got some, videos and some of your shots. If you want me to throw anything up, just let me know.
Yeah. So I'm known as Jacob, otherwise known as RTPing1 on YouTube, and I've been driving my Kia EV6 all around New Mexico and the Southwest region for the last 1 year, and I put about 30,000 miles on it. So I've been all over New Mexico and also through Kansas and Nebraska. So I've been testing out the fast charging infrastructure and kind of exploring and seeing where they're going to put it and stuff like that. Yeah, I thought they were going to put a lot more last year. So yeah, and I actually kind of coincidentally got my EV6 just before they did the massive price cuts with the Tesla. So
Gosh.
yeah, I mean,
Was that part of the did the EV6 seem like a good fit because of the charging or just the right deal at the right time?
Yeah, the charging.
I had talk here. I'm going to put your car up
Okay.
on the screen. So
yeah, because of the charging, I had researched it at least 6 months before. I actually had a reservation in for the Blazer EV from Chevy, but that one it didn't pan out, or it just didn't have enough specs. Like when they did this release or whatever, they're unveiling in July of 2022. They didn't really release that many details, so I figured I better go look for something else. And then I was researching a lot with the fastest charging EVs, and I saw the EV6. And at the time, there had only really been detailed content from Bjorn Needland, maybe a little bit from Kyle Connor. Mostly it was focused on the sibling car, the Ioniq 5, which I know you have, Steve, which is basically the same car.
Guilty.
Yeah, but I did like the styling of the EV6 a lot more. It looked more modern, and I also like that it had the interior outlet on the lower spec trims and stuff like that. So I just made that decision, and I had kind of like submitted my order right before they did that tax credit change in August of 2022. It just took a little while to find the vehicle because the supply was short at the time.
So you still got in under the wire before it ruled out the foreign manufacturer criteria?
Yeah, I got in under the grandfather clause pretty much. Yeah.
Nice job. Alrighty. So you mentioned fast charging and hitting some new sites. I'm gonna chuck maps up here because we have some. New Mexico was a piece of the Nevi puzzle in January, I think, unless it was earlier this month. There's so many announcements, I've kind of lost track now. But I'm gonna put up initially what you have there for CCS charging, and I've probably cut off a little bit of it at the bottom, so I'll remove the banner. But if there's anything you want to call out about the current state of charging over there, what are you seeing? Is it kind of enough to bridge the places you want to go? Where are the gaps right now?
Yeah, well, you can see here, and I'll try and describe for the audio listeners. There's pretty big gaps on the non-interstate part of New Mexico, except for the southeast region that Francis Energy has a few stations there. But the main issue is the whole Gila region there, which is south of Interstate 40 and north of I-10 and west of Interstate 25. Through the Gila region, there are 0 fast chargers and really not that many EV chargers of any kind there. And also to get to the northwest, to get to Farmington, the Four Corners region, it's a really tough drive on US 550 there. There aren't any chargers in that area, and also northeast New Mexico too, where Clayton's shown on the map there, the northeast corner. So basically it's just the interstate. And before last October, those 2 stations on Interstate 25 in Truth or Consequences and Socorro, they weren't online yet. So there was previously a big gap between Las Cruces and Albuquerque for non-Tesla vehicles.
And yeah, looking from the outside in here, that this looks pretty well covered, but I get the feeling from your reports, a bunch of these are kind of 50 kilowatts or perhaps a little patchy older hardware. If you had to call out kind of areas that are a little bit sketchy, even with a charger presence, which ones would those be?
Well, it's be that station there right under New Mexico where you see it. There's kind of in central New Mexico, just to the northwest of Ruido. So that is Francis Energy in Carrizozo, New Mexico. and that station's had about 8 months of downtime in the last 12 months.
Okay. That
So
probably
yeah, that
doesn't
was
qualify for 97%.
yeah, definitely not. That was actually their older hardware that they put there. It was the very first station they installed their Telus Power 60 kilowatt stations.
Okay, let's flip over to, this is Tesla Superchargers, which doesn't look too different, except for I'm assuming there's plenty more stalls here, and some of these wrenches that we see are actually coming soon, V3 or V4 sites. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, some of those are the superchargers that got the NEVI funding, but also you notice that even I always said that Tesla has shown historic disregard for Southeast New Mexico and the whole Permian Basin region. You can see there's nothing there.
Yep.
And basically I think there's just 2 stations, on the Tesla network that are outside the interstates. Those are Clayton. I think that was added a few years ago, in Farmington, New Mexico. That was actually our very first supercharger back in early 2014. But otherwise, Tesla just sticks to the interstate, and also Tesla only has version 2 across most of the route there. They have been a little slow to upgrade to version 3.
Right, so it's kind of backs up some of Eric's previous points that, even with Tesla's, strategic approach, they don't necessarily get it everywhere, right? You can get through the state, you can maybe go east-west in the interstate routes, but some of those areas you'd like to explore. In fact, I'm looking at Roswell now and thinking that one of our previous guests, Brandon, had to use charge points around there because he didn't have any supercharging options. And then I'll flip over to, this is the final one, the coming soon. So this presumably adds in a bunch of your NEVI sites, some of your Volkswagen Dieselgate kind of money that's going around there. Anything you'd want to call out? I'm seeing, for example, a bunch in the north there, a lot on the map that's kind of coming soon.
Yeah, most of those. There actually were a few more until a few weeks ago. I got word that from the VW Mitigation Trust, and I'll try to send that link over later. A lot of the stations, a few stations were canceled by Francis Energy. Those would be in Elita, that's in between Roswell and Clovis, and then another one just to the east of Ruido. So a few of those were canceled. And yeah, but the ones in the north central region, those ones I think are being installed by the electric co-ops. One of them, they're using tritium, and I think they finally switched to the newer tritium RTM, hopefully 75 kilowatt with an actual screen. But then another utility is using they're using the older tritium RT50s under the Loop network branding, Loop network.
I think we've got one of your...
Yeah.
Are you talking about the V-fill here? Or
that one's at another site, but it's basically the same equipment. Yeah, that's the tritium V-fill RT50. They're installing a lot of those under the Loop branding. So they have a lot of those there. I think one of the co-ops is I guess got a package of them or something like that.
Sure. Okay, chaps, we've done the maps. What kind of jumps out at you right away that you want to grill Jacob about in New Mexico EV infrastructure?
Well, yeah, I had a couple of things I was going to grill Jacob on because I don't have any experience with
answer your questions.
Yeah, well, because I don't have any experience with Francis Energy, and what I've heard is not great. I consider them a pretty notable regional charging provider at this point in central, the center of America, but yeah, their feedback on them hasn't been great. And then the only other thing is I have to wonder with those tritium V-fills if people aren't picking up charge points leftovers, because ChargePoint tore out thousands of those V-fills and replaced them with their CPE 250s. So yeah, I have to imagine if what people aren't getting are refurbished units. So
yeah, so for those ones, the reliability with Francis Energy, it's actually not so good, even though I have the 800 volt EV, because most of their network now is using power electronics units, and they seem to have developed, I guess, some issue with communicating with 800 volt EVs, where I get ramped down to 30 kilowatts for some reason, and they especially get confused when I have that battery cell check around 80%, and I have to do a unplug and replug cycle. But like I said, our network here, or our infrastructure, the equipment manufacturers they chose, it's all power electronics except that one station there in Cadiz. So that's Telus Power.
And I mean, the Francis Energy piece is potentially disturbing because I'll just go back to our previous stream here. These are the winning site bids. This is a little out of date now, but it still holds that Tesla has the lead. But the second one on the list there of all NEVI awards across the sites that have done it so far is Francis Energy with 32 and what probably is now around 9 or 10% of the winning awards. Jacob, does that worry you at all? Do you feel like this could be used as a springboard to go a little bit more, modern equipment? I mean, they're going to be held to uptime here, right? This is the things. Supposedly there should be much more scrutiny of this, but does that Francis Energy position on the NEVI awards concern you?
Well, it is initially a little concerning, but if you think about it, the units they installed there, they're actually not NEVI compliant because they don't even have a payment terminal on those ones there, those power electronic ones. They just have RFID. And they also, last year, it was, I think, July of last year, Francis Energy announced they were getting a huge shipment or a huge purchase order from SK Signet, those new DC fast chargers. And I used that one once when I went to Kansas, the Kansas Turnpike, one of their travel plazas there, and it worked fine. I got the full 250 or 240 kilowatts, an initial plug-in, and it worked great. The software and the screen looks good on that, even though I know that's just one data point. And if you just use just one data point, my initial experience on those power electronics units was good at first. But I do hope it's better reliability for those new SK Signets, and I believe they purchased a lot of them because, of course, they're going to replace all their BTC Power HPC dispensers in Oklahoma. I've charged on one of those in Guyman, Oklahoma, and it was the cable cooling fail-safe rate of 60 kilowatts. So they're going to replace a lot of their install in Oklahoma, and I think they got extra because they were bidding on NEVI. So I hope they'll install those SK Signets, go a little bit above and beyond the minimum requirements of NEVI, and they should hopefully install those.
Okay, well, we'll be watching them closely, of course. Walter, from your hotbed of activity with the various networks installing the latest hardware, how does that map look to you, and what you're hearing about the NEVI awards that have gone to New Mexico's way?
Yeah, so if I could put a pause on the NEVI for just a second, a couple of things that I'd like to float across for conversation is as the United States starts putting chargers in the ground and they start popping up all over the place, one of the things I've recently become aware of is that most of the United States is a baked desert and it's hot. Not a lot of clouds. And we're talking about electronics that are pushing heavy voltage and amps through cables that don't behave well with heat. And I've heard about wrapping a version 2 supercharger with a wet towel in order to get increased speed and crazy. You got to be a brave person if you're wrapping a DC fast charger cable with a wet towel, man. I don't know if I'm that brave, especially, I don't know. Sometimes even in rainstorms, I'm like, is this really worth it? This might be the final act here. But just out of curiosity, as a person who lives in a state that's famous for heat, do you feel as though that DC fast charging equipment in general has a heat derating effect as just kind of a general statement, or is that really not the case and things actually behave in your state similarly to how they do in other states?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell because the only chargers that I would think would have a huge derating would be the Electrify Americas, those ABB Terras. The spec sheet says that above 40 degrees Celsius, they have a limited output. But in general, I see that the power modules, they just can't give my EV6 or 800 volt vehicles full power. So it's a little hard to say.
Nothing to do with the heat. They just don't work, right?
Yeah, these ones here, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that one there, that's at Electrify America and Deming. So yeah, those are the ABB Terras. But I do think they need to be heat tested a lot more. You can see those ones there, the screens, they kind of lag a lot. Look, I haven't seen a screen burn in, but the screens and the units are a little bit laggy. I would probably attribute that to the heat, but they do need to do heat testing 50, 60 degrees Celsius, especially when it's just baking there in the sun and with the internal electronics and all that stuff as well.
So
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say the direct sunlight also, not only the ambient temperature, but the direct sunlight on a metal cabinet also has a heating effect. And I would have suspected is just speculation that in those areas we might have to retrofit standard gear with more cooling elements of some form, but that was just speculation. Or canopies would be great, or something like that. But anyway,
I have I mean, it fuses all the things you like, Walter. This Truth or Consequences New Mexico site that Jacob shared. You have ample coverage there, and it's generating electricity for you. So Jacob, some of your work has been tweeting at these folks, the Circle K folks in one location, the Walmart folks, presumably for this one in Truth or Consequences, as these are great sites, and this is where you want to see fast charging. Have you had replies? What's your kind of thinking behind the sites that you're visiting, and where we could make progress if that kind of facility exists already? Because we moan about canopies, right? We want solar canopies. Well, that site right there, it's got them already.
Yeah, that one there at the Walmart, that's one of the best opportunities they can have. I think it's a great photo op there for them
Beautiful.
to install at that one. But I haven't had any real replies on Twitter. It's probably the wrong source. I think I'll probably have to invest or look at other means, maybe on LinkedIn, or maybe just contact the companies directly through email or feedback or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great sites, and I was a little disappointed to see that neither Walmart nor Circle K applied for it. I guess I could do a records request, see if they did apply for, but they weren't awarded NEVI.
Mm.
And I know that Walmart, they're just pursuing it on their own, which is great, but I'm not too sure what the Circle K charging's done, especially after Brandon Flash left. I'd be curious to know their expansion plans and all that, because a year ago I actually stretched up, because I was going already to Trinidad, Colorado, and I took a look at their Colorado City, Colorado charger like 2 months before it was active, and I was really hoping that they would expand South Colorado, maybe coming to New Mexico, because there are a lot of pretty great Circle K stores. There's, like I said, that Hatch one there, and then there's also the Socorro one, and those are pretty close to the interstate. I mean, the Hatch one is within 1 mile, and Hatch didn't get a NEVI fund, so that's the key thing. There are some gaps that will be in the network with the round 1 funding, so there probably will be round 2 to close up the last interstate gaps in the interstates in New Mexico. So hopefully Circle K can win that award, because I think that is actually the best site within the 1 mile for Hatch, New Mexico. And there's already one coming soon, but it's just one CPU 250. That's separate from NEVI, but yeah.
No, it's well pointed out, and it kind of shows you how many players we have now to go after, right? I mean, you could certainly say Circle K and Walmart, but then you could look at the number of truck stops that you have there, the various players that are operating down in the southeast there, and every region has its own kind of chain of different C stores that are trying to decide how much they want to future proof and test the waters. All of these ones that I think anyone would be well advised to jump in at this point, to at least test and start to get some data back to see how fast charging at your locations kind of starts to move the needle a little bit, who you attract, when they use it, and just having that, even if for that minimal investment of like your pilots and your initial starters. Because I think Citgo just did one with X-Charge, and it's only 1 unit. It's not going to be a whole lot of stuff, but it's something in the ground that gives them the experience of how long it takes to get it in there, what kind of hurdles they're going to run up against, what kind of power they're going to need, what sort of usage they'll get. It's just interesting to see who's moving quickly, with your pilot flying J's and the kind of ones that have this grand nationwide ambition, to the ones who are doing 1 site, 2 sites, and just trying to feel it out to see what's there.
Yeah, about that topic, I was wondering what you all thought about the Love's Travel Centers and their EV plans. I know they went with Electrify America, and they seem to kind of stop that development. There are a few Loves in the state of New Mexico that aren't partnered with Electrify America already. And I think those are the Lordsburg one. That's actually kind of across the freeway from the existing EA, which is at Chevron, and it's across town from the Pilot Flying J. And then the Las Cruces Airport location for Love's doesn't have any EV chargers there. And then, of course, Travel Centers of America. I know they have a location there in Santa Rosa, which the EA is like across the street at the Love's. So I was wondering what y'all thought about their both those two companies' network expansion.
I mean, I see them on the list, certainly. Love's is, I've visited a couple of the locations along the stretch in Pennsylvania of I-80 seems to be the most broad-based Nevy Awards, at least, that I've seen, and that has pretty much, it's all truck stops, and it's a bunch of different ones. It's not just your Pilot Flying J as it is in Ohio. There's a Love's one right in the center. There's one that got 1.1 million that's a Travel Centers of America. So I think that, to me, you know, that'll be an interesting route to run. Once they all get in there, you'll start to be able to see, you know, what different approaches and different hardware they're going to be trying to use here. But I haven't felt a national drive from Love specifically, with or without Electrify America. It hasn't felt like a place that's, you know, popping up all over the map, where places that I'm visiting at least.
Yeah, I know here in California, Love's has either they, like I think Anthony mentioned in the comments there, either they had a falling out with EA or something, because they just haven't made any forward progress. A few of the Loves have their own like EV Connect chargers that they've installed, but in California, I don't know of a single EA charger site at a Loves. So, and we have many of them that are well placed, and a gap for EA as well. So
Yeah, and that station mentioned there, I was kind of looking at it over the holiday season, and yeah, that one, the Quartzsite site is it's really backed up, and it also brings to mind how come Rivian's taking so long to open up their adventure network. All they have to do really is just redesign their app and let us pay. But I know the Rivian, they have a site, I think, there in Quartzsite, and also kind of near Yuma as well, so they don't have to only do EA.
Yeah, I mean, it was news. I struggle to call it news that Rivian confirmed second half of 2024 for opening the network, which is, you know, anything from July to December 31st. So it doesn't really help us because it had already said they would open it in 2024. So I don't really count that as news, but definitely those sites are in places that, you know, it hits Eric's national parks and kind of outdoorsy kind of feel. And I don't know why it would take that long. I think it's just a case of making sure that it's, you know, ready to go for other providers. I don't think they have necessarily the whole experience buttoned up for Rivians themselves yet, let alone a flood of other EVs coming in. Although I don't think it's going to be something that would back up a lot, because there's not that many. Whenever I visit these places, if there's a Rivian charging, it's only a Solo.
yeah, and one of the ones that I don't know if they have in New Mexico, but they were present a lot in Utah and areas, and even now in Northern California, is Maverick Adventures First Stop, because they originally had charge points. That was with the Utah Clean Air Act. Utah Clean Air, I think they go by UCARE, but they had some tritium V-fills originally that have since been pulled, right? But so we have these Maverick sites, but I don't know if they have any partners at this point in terms of EV charging. So that's another opportunity in addition to like Love's and TA and other travel plazas.
Yeah, I didn't know this before I started to get into the whole Pilot Flying J situation. I was on a live stream with a professional long haul trucker, and apparently there's like tiers to those truck stops, and Love's is at the top. Pilot Flying J is the largest. They've got the most locations, but Love's apparently has got kind of a premium feel to it, and we haven't heard anything from them. And I almost wonder if IONNA and them are talking in back rooms or something, because we were speculating on where they would end up. We haven't really heard one way or the other, but a nationwide premium truck stop brand would definitely fit the bill, immediately off the interstate with property all over the United States, and going for a premium feel would all be pretty good matches there. But I don't think we've heard the story yet from Love's, and it could be very large. Not only the Nevy Awards, but they've got money to spend just like everyone else, and they see the writing on the wall just like everyone else. And their lack of progress, as Eric alluded to, is perplexing. So I'm sure they've thought this through, and they're just waiting for the right time in order to proceed.
Yeah, probably that. And then also, what do you think about the Petro truck stops? Do you know who they're affiliated with?
It was smaller. Not the three big ones are TA, Love's, and Pilot Flying J, and then there's a bunch of smaller players out there.
Yeah, because there's one truck stop there. I don't think they got the award, because I think there was still going to be a small gap between Deming and Larsberg, and that Petro truck station I went to one time was actually pretty good. But that might be another round 2 Nevi award since it didn't get anything for round 1.
Okie dokie. I am going to, having been pretty much on top of the comments, I'm now way behind. So I'm going to try and catch up some people. I'm going to stick to ones that are related to our locations and truck stops, that kind of thing, or anything that's for Jacob. So Leonard says, I like the installs at travel plazas and center islands of highways, unless you're looking for somewhere to eat. It'd be nice if there were chargers near big clusters of restaurants. Yeah, that kind of slides into retail outlets, right? There's a lot of those, you know, when you get these strip malls or retail centers that have a bunch of different food options. That's great. The trouble is with that, sometimes they tend to be closed pretty early. So, you know, if you're traveling later at night, that's not going to be such a good fit.
Yeah, one option that does fit in there is hotels, because they, as Eric was mentioning, one nice thing about the location is that the business model is pretty solid, and there's not many hotels that close down. It's pretty unusual for that to happen. And they're also staffed 24/7, 365, and they typically have restroom facilities. So if there's a site selection going out there, the hotel is pretty. I see a lot of superchargers getting placed at hotels, so likely that's what they were thinking, is the 24/7 amenities.
Well, I think they're moving away from hotels. I followed a supercharger thread on the Tesla Motor Club's forum.
Okay.
The original supercharger in Van Horn, they actually removed it, and yeah, mostly because the owners, they just didn't like how the EV drivers would sometimes take advantage of the place and eat dinner there and stuff. And I think the pandemic also had an effect on it. But I think Tesla is pivoting away from hotels. If you go look at they have one, let's see, the nearby ones. I know there are hotels, the Albuquerque one on Manal. That one's kind of near, it's co-located by an Applebee's and Holiday Inn Express, but they've added a bunch of other stations in Albuquerque. And then the Las Vegas, New Mexico one's at Comfort Inn, and they got a NEVI award. It says about the permits for Arby's, but that's a little more than 1 mile. So unless they get that exemption, they might go somewhere else. But the restaurants, I'd say it's a better fit, or I think the best fit's like gas station model. But for the hotel management side, I don't think they see DC fast chargers as the best solution, because it doesn't attract people to stay in the rooms. I know initially when Tesla was rolling out, some of the hotel owners thought that a lot of the Tesla drivers would book a room and stay there, but it's really just for through travel.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah, it would be a level 2 charger for the people staying overnight, and it would be better for the Tesla drivers at the DC fast charger to be at a hotel than it would be for the hotel to have the Tesla DC fast chargers there. So definitely one-sided. That's a good point.
And it's also an awkward, I mean, the place will be open, but it's an awkward conversation to just kind of walk in and, you know, you need to use their restroom, right? But that's about it. You don't need anything else from them. But I think there's been there were a slew of announcements or re-announcements on Twitter recently from Tesla Charging, reaffirming their partnerships for the universal wall connector with hotel chains. So, you know, they're talking about tens of thousands of those going in at chains across North America. And that's the right fit. You know, that's where those things need to be, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. And then if we could go on a little tangent about hotel charging, I've also had some difficulties with hotel charging in biggest state to the north of me in Albuquerque. There's a few good hotels that I used to stay at, but then they changed their pricing model to have an idle fee, which just doesn't really make sense for hotels and stuff like that. And yeah, it's
brilliant.
just
I want to be
some of
woken up
the
at 3 a.m. to an announcement that I've got 5 minutes to move my car before $50 charge is levied on my user.
Yeah.
Nothing says restful night's sleep than idle fees.
But I think it's kind of hurt their business, because we go through on PlugShare, there really aren't that many check-ins ever since they raised the prices, and I made it known to the people on PlugShare that they raised the prices. So I don't think that many EVs are even stopping there, and it's just too bad, because they had 4 chargers, so 2 dual handle charge points. Yeah, charge point AC chargers, and yeah, they just have an idle fee. And then a lot of the other hotels there, they don't really have charging, or they have it like a little under spec, so 16 amps split across 2. And then another one I stayed in downtown only had 2 chargers, and it's normally okay, but I stayed on Labor Day weekend, and I was only able to charge like 2 out of 4 nights, because there was an icing problem because they didn't have signage. So yeah, and then at least one of the other nights 2 other EVs stopped there. So yeah.
Okie dokie, let's sit on dwell time here a little bit to Eric's point about grocery stores. Paul, who actually does a lot of really great articles at, I think it's wind-works.org. I'll put links down in the description for the replay, but there's a lot of good content over there from Paul. But he had charged at Boku Superfoods in OJ. Presumably sounds familiar to you.
Ojai. Yeah, they have a nice they have a nice supercharger there too. So yeah, the owner of Boku Foods is very EV friendly. And yeah, the EV advocacy group of Ventura County actually has meetings out there sometimes at Boku Foods.
So that's, I mean, that's a kind of semi-leisurely stop, but that's a kind of stop that I would put it down to be quite relaxing, right? I mean, you're not in a huge hurry, you're with friends, you're just enjoying a coffee, and then you move on. So that kind of lines up with that 40-50 minute stop that maybe for groceries as well could actually be quite a similar match. T Palmer asks, where can one find Eric's site scoring template and the 5 criteria? Is that online somewhere? You can probably find it if I put it in the replay, but off the top of your head.
I think I know, Walter, you might have put it in a spreadsheet. I think you and I might need to get together and figure out how to publish that so people can get to it. So,
very well.
Yeah.
Mike ignores dealer charges. I actually just wrote a piece for EV Info on a few dealers that have started to do EV charging right, but it was quite a stretch to find them. I mean, it was, even just to find folks who kept it open 24/7 and didn't block it with inventory, was not easy. So although I think there are good folks out there, and I'd call out Ford for really starting to install some high power kit and some impressive stuff, it's not as easy as it should be. Let's see, for Crazy Postman, a lot of good videos on his YouTube channel, by the way, after this. So the nearest chargers he can use are still 60 miles away. I mean, I guess if you have home charging, that's fine, but it depends kind of, where you're starting from, and if there's starting to get, 60-mile gaps are above the NEVI kind of requirement, but that wouldn't worry me too much. I'm thinking of places where there are 130-mile gaps, which in winter is starting to push it. If you're starting from an 80%, 90% kind of charge, probably, Jacob, you would have more areas where there are that kind of gap, or at least decent chunks. But any range anxiety on those kind of routes?
A little bit, but I would like to touch on dealer charging first. I don't know how it is over there in other parts of the country, but here in the West, we get the dealer lots close after hours. They usually have gates, or they block them with their own vehicles, so you can't drive in. So those dealer chargers you can't use. And actually, in the city where I'm at, we don't have any non-dealer DC fast chargers online yet. So I can kind of speak to that there is like a big gap if you need to go out somewhere and your battery's low. I usually just plug in with the 11 kilowatt charge rate and try to charge as fast as I can. But otherwise, there is a pretty significant gap between the next public 24/7 DC fast chargers where I'm at.
So how many of those pips on that New Mexico map would that eliminate then, if you took out the dealership chargers?
Dealership chargers, not too many. I think it depends on if you took the image with the dealers, because now Plugshare does have a nice, I guess you didn't check the high dealerships, but the Alamogordo one would go away, and then
this is the
Las Cruces.
This is what I've found with trying to get into the the state of EV charging series, is it's what really, and this speaks to what the topic of today really, what should you consider? I've left them all in because I think this is, it's just, you have to take them at face value and say there is a charger there if you need it. But all charging is not created equal. It's as you say, and Walter had a little exchange there in the comments about, dealerships that have locked up the gates now, that maybe started once as 24/7 facilities, or at least 24/7 access, that eventually, what if the dealership just realizes public are using it, which they maybe didn't think they would do, and suddenly locks people out? And that starts to screw up your road trip. And that is why dealership charging is plan C more often than not, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't use that as my first option. I think the only kind of good experience there in Lincoln, Nebraska, they had a dealer kind of across the street from my hotel. My hotel had charging, thankfully, but wanted to test the chargers there. But that lot was open 24/7. So I guess it depends what area you're in.
Yeah, I guess I have to give a shout to one of the dealers that I did feature, Markop Ford in Holyoke, Massachusetts, who are a potentially more friendly location than the Electrify America there, because the Electrify America is the first one that went in, and it's at Home Depot, which is, just a weird combination. There are other things around there, but it's an oddity. And the Ford dealership has a dedicated cafe. It has 3 ChargePoint Express Plus, 250 kilowatt max, I think they are. They're not blocked by dealer inventory anytime I've been there, and I've used them at least once to bridge that kind of gap in central to western Mass, because the EA station it hasn't got the full ride share driver plague yet, but there are enough out there that they could easily block it if you hit it at the wrong time. So I guess that's an example of dealership charging where it kind of pays off. Mike is still pulling for Costco. I think they've installed 1 or 2 free wires, which probably isn't going to move the needle, but they're starting to try, if nothing else. They have the real estate, if nothing else, right? They definitely have the places that you might be able to put in a pretty significant hub. Tyler at the Average EV, who just released a few more site reviews, so we'll get those up on a map and try and share those. But these are really good videos, kind of following what we're talking about with reviewing sites and making sure that we have good feeling kind of for what is at the sites, and a little tour beforehand. But he is kind of on the side of low power DCFC being beneficial in certain circumstances there. Bill says trouble with chargers located at shopping opportunities as locals with free juice take up the stalls while road trippers have to wait for those situations. Yeah, I mean, if you're road tripping, I would try and avoid anything free unless you have a plan with Electrify America or EVgo or whatever. That obviously changes the dynamic a little bit. But if you're road tripping and trying to travel fast, I would avoid city centers, big retail outlets that are on a busy weekend or a holiday. All of these places where it's potentially going to get jammed up with locals or free rides. That's not somewhere you want to be, I don't think. Bran says Costco would be great, but the parking lots are so crowded already. Maybe if they get rid of the gas pumps. Prescient view of what's coming up. Yeah. Mike echoes Rivian Adventure Network needs to open before summer. That would definitely be useful. Opening in December is not much use to anybody. By then, that could be a big, and they need money, right? We're talking about Rivian burning cash. Then that could be a little bit of a revenue generator while we're still waiting for, Nevi sites and Tesla to open. And let's quickly finish up here. Anthony says the EA station in Yakima, Washington is at a Walmart across the street from a park with additional bathrooms, kids' playground, open space for dogs, ice cream truck in summer. That sounds like the kind of place you want to be. And Brand says, hey, Jacob, let me jump down through and make sure there's nothing that we missed for Jacob here. And you've been engaging in there as well. So
yeah,
that's all good.
I do think 100 kilowatts is the minimum, because a few of those ones I saw, those tritium V-fills, they're paired, or not paired, but they're right next to each other, 2 50 kilowatt units, and that just doesn't make sense. They should just install one 100 kilowatt unit that can power share, and it's the same grid connection and stuff like that. I think 50 kilowatts in most cases, not all, but most cases, it needs to be phased out, especially for the first station in town. I think it should be at least 100 kilowatts. And if you're going to install 2 right next to each other, they should at least be able to power share when there's only one vehicle there.
Yeah, I think 50 kilowatt minimum per post is acceptable, but to your point, there should be multiple posts. So
yeah, with power sharing, because the grid connection supports it anyways. Just the chargers would need to.
And let me also go to one more comment, because I don't think we said hello to Robert Stillbaker, and he's kind of got this duality there, which these may seem kind of different types of stop at some point, so maybe we want to cover this. But grocery store and truck stop stations were convenient on his cross-country road trip, and it kind of leads in a little bit. We sit on Walmart for a little bit longer, because we were talking about how much Walmart, or how many different use cases Walmart covers, right? And if when I say grocery station or grocery store charging, I'm thinking you're around here, at least Hannaford's, Wegmans, kind of a dedicated grocery stop. But there's, with a Walmart especially, there are a lot of different types of grocery stop, right? So we covered that it would be good for trips if you're camping. You need to pick up supplies. On my way home sometimes, when we've been away for a week and you just need bread, milk, and sundry items, it can be a pretty good way to. There's always a Walmart on our charging route, whether we try to or not. It's always there. They have fast food restaurants at some places, although it's a little bit lacking sometimes. You probably don't want to eat at a Dunkin', for example. We have a bunch of those. But what are you thinking in terms of are there different levels of grocery store charging that we need? Because grocery store is great, but it covers kind of like gas stations and truck stops, right? There's a significant enough difference that maybe we want to draw some lines between what's a good travel grocery stop and what's a good local community grocery store stop. And Eric, you are on grocery stores, so I'll head over to you.
And I think it comes down to the charger itself. That's why I mentioned ChemPower. I think for dedicated travel chargers, like convenience stores or gas station models, travel plazas, I think you should be getting as close to the posted speed of that charger as possible. I'm not even a fan of split power chargers when it comes to those types of locations. But when it comes to grocery stores, I'm the exact opposite. I would much rather see power split 4, 6, 8 ways than see, you're guaranteed to get 150 to 350 kilowatt if you plug into this station. I would much rather have it split across multiple plugs. And then if you get higher power, great. If not, it's not a big deal because that charger is really there for the community and it just happens to align with your travel. Versus for a convenience store or a gas station, if it says 150 kilowatt on it, I want to be getting 150 kilowatt every time I plug in, or 300 or 200 or 400 kilowatt, depending on what it is. I want to see more dedicated power on the dedicated travel locations.
And Walter, what are you thinking in terms of the options to power share and have that kind of split dynamic sharing versus someone who just needs that full power? They have a car that can take it. They want to know they'll get that for their travel route.
It depends on the hardware manufacturer and the options available to the site host with whatever hardware is chosen. And FreeWire is a good option there because you could FreeWire Professional. You can link them all together and do something similar to what is being described. Don't need heavy grid connections either. You can just do 100 amp. But one distinction I'd like to make is that I've noticed if the site host owns the property, like there's a distinction between the Walmart native DC fast charger project as is coming versus what Electrify America was, which was they were putting their chargers on Walmart property. And so Walmart would dictate where those chargers would go. They say, go ahead and put them in the back of the lot. It's different if the site host actually owns the property, because what they're trying to do is make their customers feel comfortable and welcome. So I've noticed that in locations like Circle K, 7-Eleven, Racetrack, when you look at the way they build those things, Pilot Flying J as well, it's got a welcoming feel to it. And if I'm choosing a location to charge at, being in the back of a Anchor Mall's lot in parking spaces that are not commonly used, because that's where they were designated for the DC fast charger to get installed to, versus a grocery store like Maher, which is installing EVgo hardware in Ohio, which is going to be likely integrated into their overall site plan, much more beneficial to the chargers. I would choose that, where the site host owns the hardware and the property.
It's also interesting, kind of aligns with something Jacob had mentioned to us beforehand about Walmart, and I didn't realize this, Walmart charging only being available through their app, right? So although they're using ChargePoint hardware, well, obviously it's branded on, physically to Walmart, but at the same time, that speaks to the data play and not just owning the location physically, but owning the experience of, being able to guide them through your portal and being able to have that piece of it.
Little known aspect about that, they could also track location with their app. So they know that if you're charging, do you come in the store? Do you buy a sandwich? Do you buy a pair of jeans? They know all that when you're using your app, because there's a location telemetry occurring.
Jacob, anything to you want to
Yeah.
expand on that, because it was one of your kind of key points, I think.
Yeah, I think Walmart, they're pivoting to their own network because they're wanting more data and just a tighter integration than what they currently get with Electrify America. Because I'm sure they might share some data, but who knows what they would really share. And with the new Walmart chargers coming in, its ChargePoint brand is not there at all, and I don't believe you can even use from looking at the PlugShare comments, I don't think you can even use the ChargePoint card to RFID. You have to use the Walmart app, so
I
it's all
agree.
within
Yep.
all within the Walmart app, and they want to just keep it all within in-house and just leverage that extra data. And they've been expanding in other ways too with their subscription plan, the Walmart Plus. And well, they've been leveraging technology for a while, because I know they had in-store maps at some stores even before the pandemic, where it just tells you, oh, this product's aisle number 9 and where it's at on the shelf. So I know they've been leveraging that. And about grocery stores, I'd say still 100 kilowatts minimum, but yeah, it's a good way to split it up. Just have at least 2, maybe 4 power sharing posts. But yeah, 100 kilowatts is a good amount to future proof. They shouldn't get less than 100 kilowatt grid connection for grocery store fast chargers. In most cases, I understand there are smaller grocery stores and stuff like that. But I think in general, the grocery stores already take a significant amount of power. I think like 150 kVA, because they have to run all those coolers and stuff. So I mean, it's not like they don't have a good enough grid connection already.
Yeah, well, and that's why you're seeing so much solar on a lot of these locations. So
Big Barney thinks 50 kilowatts is 1980s. Does anybody?
I do
Eric,
agree.
that doesn't date back to you, does it?
no, my
No trouble in the
1980s EVs don't take 50 kilowatts. My 1990s EVs will, but not my 80s.
I might try and hit 88 miles per hour tomorrow, see if I can go back and check.
1.21 gigawatts.
My flux capacitor isn't working though. So. Let's see what else. Getting late. Yes, we are running up on time here. I think this probably kind of sums up, what we've said a bunch of times, and we keep coming back to. Dwell time should match your usage, and I think that's where we're starting to get to. I maybe just go around here quickly and finish us up. There are things we wanted to kind of hit, and I'll try and get through the comments as a closer. But what can we kind of say as we enter this next wave? What do you want to see in terms of or charging networks and site hosts pairing up to make sure that dwell time does match? And I think we also didn't really hit the business use case and the business viability that you had mentioned, Eric, in the build up to it. How does that gel with choosing the right sites, getting the right equipment in the right place, and making sure all of these kind of collaborations get into the places that we want them to be?
Well, and I think that all goes back to what Walter had said initially about the early chargers were just get in where you could fit in. Can you host this power? If so, I'm going to put a charger there. It doesn't really matter if it's a dark alley like San Luis Obispo. But the thing is, I think number one is the businesses themselves need to be educated, right? And they just don't right now. We aren't seeing that because they don't know anything about EV charging, and either they think about it like a gas pump or they think about it like something completely different. And so the big thing is just matching those power levels to whatever that site dwell time is and the expected time that those EV owners are going to be there. We see this all the time now with Walmart, with Electrify America, or there's another one. We have a Safeway, I think, in Northern California, where people are sitting there in their cars for 15 to 20 minutes while they charge up to 80% and hitting. And I'm looking at you, EGMP owners. And yeah, they sit in their cars for 10 to 15, 20 minutes, and then they're gone. Never go in the store, never interact with the site host at all. So what is that benefit to Walmart or those grocery stores? So I would see, like I said, 50 to 100 kilowatt per post for grocery stores makes sense to me. It compels you to go in and use the business. 150 to 200 kilowatts makes more sense to me for fast food or fast dining. It's not fast enough to get you in and out quickly, but quick enough that you can go grab food and come out. And then those 300 to 400 kilowatts really are ideal for travel plazas where they're churning. They want you in and out in 10 to 15 minutes. That's where they make most of their revenue. And at that point, you can start making a business case to these host businesses, and then they'll start to want to host chargers, and they'll go out of their way to do it, right? It seems idiotic that Love's doesn't have chargers at every location in California, but they don't. And the same goes for dozens of other ideal locations for charging. So,
and Walter, you're you're visiting these places. You're seeing, you're assessing the kind of the rollout as they come. The ones that you're tracking, are you seeing them use the right equipment? Is the dwell time matching the type of hardware and the type of locations they're putting in?
What I'm seeing is businesses are selecting hardware appropriate to the power that's available. And oftentimes that equates to a free wire as a alternative to a heavy grid connection. Or if they have a standing transformer that they could loop into, they're not going to upgrade it. So I do see a lot of savvy business decisions associated with builds with whatever site power is available at the time versus doing a heavy site upgrade and a multi-build. Locations like convenience stores, independent businesses that are putting in DC fast chargers, which are a pretty heavy investment. You want to see the ROI on that get turned around pretty quickly. If you could shave off 20, 30, 40K for the electrical site upgrade by putting in something with battery boosting, or something like one of those Zooster 100s, then it makes business sense to do so. So what I'm seeing is a lot of creativity being brought to the solution. And I don't think there could be government guidance. I think most of the chargers that are going in now, I'm pretty confident in saying this, are not government funded. They're private funded. And those are independent business owners making decisions for themselves what is best in order to attract customers.
And Jacob, how are you seeing obviously you have a slightly more sparse coverage there,
Yeah.
but are you seeing, do you feel like it's about to move into that phase where the hardware is starting to get a better match with the site, or is it still going to be over there for a while, pins in a map, just try and make the coverage fit the state that you're in right now?
Well, I think probably where Walter's at, they have a lot more advanced EVs there, and just more the network build outs a lot further along than where I'm at. They were going to put a bunch of 50 kilowatt. I think they still need some guidance here where I'm at in New Mexico, and a lot of them, like you saw those chargers there in northern New Mexico, I think those were government funded sort of because the co-ops are putting them in. But here in New Mexico, there really aren't that many private businesses putting in chargers. It's just maybe, like I said, I really hope Walmart can have a look and expand their network here, or just be like those national players that would have to expand to New Mexico. But most of the local businesses, they are still barely thinking about AC charging when they should sometimes, some of them should be thinking about DC charging and stuff like that.
And on AC, I think we've criminally overlooked level 2 again. Should we have an entire stream on it at some point? Because I feel like we're only touched on it now and again, but it's the ugly stepchild of charging, unfortunately, but it's so needed. So I think that may be in our future, an episode that bars DC fast charging.
Yeah, but I do think they need to put at least 40 amps, especially because at those businesses, you don't even get the 240 volts. You get 208 or around 212. So I think it needs to be at least 40 amps and maybe 48, just a few, especially for the big battery trucks. That's another thing with the DC fast chargers. I know what Eric was saying about the grocery stores. That would work for smaller battery EVs up to maybe 100 kilowatts. But then when you start getting to those big battery EV trucks, which we'll have to see if they spread a number or not. But if you have a 150 kilowatt hour pack, then it takes like an hour or so to charge at 150 kilowatts, especially when you factor in the charge curve. So I do think I'm on the side of they need a future proof. They shouldn't do 50 kilowatts in the most part. They should do at least 100. Just go a little bit bigger now, and then you can save yourself money down the road without having to do a grid upgrade, or with the transformers, the biggest delay as it is right now. They should go with the biggest transformer they can get, and so they don't have to upgrade it later.
I just listened to the ChemPower Financial annual report, and they're getting ready to release a megawatt DC fast charger product specifically for trucks. So that's definitely on the horizon.
Yeah.
At least
I was
equipment manufacturer being available.
Yeah, I was just going to say, should you really be getting groceries in a truck? But
No, but I mean like light duty, not the semis, but like
Yeah.
the Hummer EV or the other ones that.
To this
The
day, the
Silverado.
only place I've seen a Hummer EV in the wild is the Wegmans parking lot waiting for its pickup groceries. So it is a local grocery getter. That's what it's for. I would be remiss, and thank you, Jacob, for touching on the voltage there, because Mike Mahan put me onto Alex on Auto's EV Buyer's Guide, who did a really good video on the move to J3400 and the benefits of 277 volt and 48 amp charging, how that's going to be. It was a real deep dive, so if you've got your electrical hat on, then that's one to go and watch, and I will leave that in the description. I think we are pretty much over time here, so I'm going to give everyone's channels a quick plug. So starting with our guest, Jacob is at youtube.com/rtpenguin1, and you'll be able to find a teaser of his EV6 travels and lots more coming up on that by the sound of it. You can catch him on Twitter X as well. Same thing, rtpenguin1.
It's at Mr. Artie Penguin, MR, Mr. Artie Penguin.
Gotcha. All right, and that's there's a bunch of your kind of real-time reports there, right? So
Yeah.
pretty much as you go, that's where to catch those. So definitely check out Jacob's channel, and you'll get a much better feel for New Mexico and the beautiful landscape, and hopefully the expanding charging landscape as we go. Walter, that's a long thing there, but you can search for the Network Architect channel. Lots of good updates on the networks. A really good one recently that we didn't get time to discuss on your charging infrastructure around Concord, North Carolina, and how that kind of gels or doesn't gel at all with Akio Toyota's view of electric vehicles. Really just as itself a good standalone piece of what Walter's seeing locally.
It unfortunately touched a nerve. There was a lot of negative comments that came flooding in from that one. A little disturbed on that, but
yeah, not so
it
good.
is what it is.
Yeah, I assume that you're. Well, I maintain we will see a lot more of that this year. It's just going to be as we go into the second half of the year. It's going to be EVs are a battlefield, I'm afraid. So, batten down the hatches. It's coming. And Mr. Eric Way over at News Column. You can check out. You've got some recent videos. I think you got a new camera, right? A new bit of kit to take out and explore North California's charging infrastructure.
Yeah, now I just got to get out of the house. But I was going to say, Walter hit him with a 1-2 punch with his diffusion of innovation curve, and letting people know that EV adoption is exactly where it needs to be. So
I just watched that one today. Walter is prolific at the moment. He's got so many out that I'm only on his last but 1 or 2 or 3. So usually go to the channel and you'll get the latest. And for my part, I will have coming up the state of EV charging in New Hampshire. That's going to be my next one. I just covered the sorely underpowered Massachusetts Turnpike chargers, which are apparently going to be upgraded, and they will get to the full 120 kilowatts. So still not quite your high power 350 kilowatts, but definitely getting to a slightly better fit. And you can check that out on Plug and Play EV at the moment. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Jacob, for taking time out to share your travels, and we will see you in the next one. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.